Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Good morning or good day to you if it's still daylight outside, or good evening for me. For me at the moment, it's evening. I am connecting from Europe, from Romania. And as per the last list that I checked with our audience for today, I guess most of the registrations were from the Middle East area. So it means that we are on the same. Yes, we're in the same time zone. But I do welcome everyone from. Across the world. I've seen some names that don't sound specific to this region, so welcome. I have started the conversation in the chat earlier, encouraging you to interact with each other, write your questions, and some of the questions we might be able to address during the meeting of today. Others, I will pick them up at the end, and I'm happy to provide an answer in writing later on. Thank you for making the time to be here, and I want to dive a bit straight into the topic so that we can keep the event as scheduled for the next hour. I think that by now you should be able also to see very clearly the screen with the presentation. I'm excited to host tonight and facilitate a discussion around the key findings of the KPI Institute latest research study, the State of Strategy Management Practice Report. This is a report we released earlier this month on the 1st of November. My name is Cristina Mihailoae. I am the Business Unit Manager of the Research Division at the KPI Institute. However, I come today before you in a dual role. On one hand, to share a very small piece from the work of my team, because the full report has around 70 pages, so we'll be able to touch on a very few issues from the entire report. And on the other hand, to provide some guidance from my professional experience as a strategy and performance management specialist. In the past 10 years, I have been engaged in both researching best practices and directly supporting organizations through training and consultancy services to improve performance management. So with this in mind, let me give you some insights about the KPI Institute. Perhaps some of you are not familiar with the full scope of our activity. The KPI Institute is going to celebrate its 20th anniversary, the 20th anniversary next year. We have a history as being a research institute specialized in business performance, and we operate research programs in 12 domains that connect to KPIs and performance management, such as strategy planning and execution, employee performance management, corporate and operational performance management, and data analytics. So we have built in the past years a full portfolio around what seems to be the core of our brand, the usage of the KPIs. And we managed to disseminate our knowledge by providing publications and resources, along with training programs, certification products, and advisory services. So far, we've trained more than 20 professionals across the world in 60 countries, plus 60 countries, and that was possible with the support of our network of global partner organizations, to whom we want to thank you for the ongoing efforts of helping us disseminate our knowledge. You can find our resources in terms of research on our marketplace, where you'll find research reports like the one we're going to discuss today. But we also have our legacy publications like top 25 KPI reports dedicated to functional areas and industries, or our performance magazine that collects interviews from practitioners and updated articles on recent practices and trends. In terms of certification, each of our practice domains in which we have expertise also is accompanied by a certification that professionals can obtain. So if you're interested, you can find a direct link here to our programs, or executive education for top management related to how to manage strategy and corporate performance management, graduate certificate or postgraduate, depending on your interest and in-depth in learning. And not last, our consultancy services. More recently, you might have seen our maturity assessments, which sometimes end up with a celebration of excellency and best practices through awards. As of our presentation today, I will be showing you some research highlights. They are literally the highlights. I had to pick just a few so that we can cover everything in the 1 hour planning that we have. And then upon that, I want to build further so that we can discuss some practitioner insights and guidance to consider in shaping or improving of practices, key takeaways, and then in the end you have a few slides in terms of how we can help or how we can get in touch with us if you're interested to continue the conversation. I will ask you that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to write them in the chat. If I manage to multitask and I find the question relevant for the point that I'm making, I will stop and take the question. Otherwise, once we finish, we'll give a few minutes, 15 to 10 minutes to questions, and then I'll scroll to the chat box so that we can pick a few to discuss. I wanted to open the subject of our discussion, moving from the research highlights, and let me give you a few details about this new publication that we released. Okay, the State of Strategy Management Practice Report is a research initiative that we actually started last year in 2022 when we launched the first edition of the report. This year, we continue to collect data about strategic planning, performance measurement, and strategy execution. Our reports contain research findings and statistics, but also recommendations. At the end, you will find some recommendations for best practices to be implemented in the field of work. The study of this year contains responses from 69 countries, predominantly are coming from professionals who work in organizations with more than 500 employees. And we targeted, of course, executive and managers, those who have, let's say, the first-hand experience in the processes that we're actually looking at. The findings this year, as opposed to last year, are available in 2 formats. You can access a global report in English, but we've also created a regional report for the Middle East, which is available both in English and Arabic. As a part of your attendance today, we'll share with you directly these files. They will be in your inbox, in your gift bag, along with the performance scorecard template and a recording of the event. As I was saying, I struggled a bit with identifying what would be the key aspects that what will be the key aspects that I would like to bring to the discussion so that we can further debate on. And I've checked the audience of our webinar, and since most of you are coming from the Middle East region, then I have included the statistics specifically for Middle East. However, when I thought about what to talk about, I said, okay, let's start with looking at the challenges, since we have some dedicated questions in the report for that. So what I'm gonna present now is a list of challenges for strategic planning, challenges for performance measurement, challenges for reasons for strategy failures. And the truth is that top 3 challenges or aspects ranked the same in the global report as they did in the Middle East. So with that in mind, our discussion about challenges, I think it goes beyond the Middle East region. It's relevant for at the international level across the boundaries of this territory. Okay. So let's see, what do you think are top 3 challenges in strategic planning? Should I give you a few minutes to give me your ideas in the chat? Or maybe to make it easier, what do you think is the most common challenge in strategic planning? Thank you, Wasid. Wasid from Taiwan, I think, from Thailand, sorry, from Thailand. Creating buy-in. Okay, Haitam says data gathering. You were close. Leadership support. Time. Okay. Many good ideas there. And let me show you what I have. Actually, is what the data says. The first ranked challenge was to create a methodical process for strategy planning. The second was conducting an external environment analysis. So I think that might touch to what you said earlier about data and collecting information. And the third one was choosing the right KPIs. Let's see about working with KPIs. Any ideas here? What do you think is mostly challenging? We're going to go a little bit through all of the topics so that we have the big picture, and then we're going to dive in details on each of them. Selecting the right KPIs, defining what's a key measurement, distinguishing between what's actually important and what's nice to have or not critical. Clarity, very good. Aligning KPIs and target setting across the organization seems to be the #1 challenge. However, this has shifted. We've been asking this question for 7 years at the very least in terms of what's the challenge in working with KPIs, and consistently the #1 challenge turned out to be KPI selection. But this year and last year, things have slightly changed. And what we have now is alignment of KPIs seems to be the pressure matter, followed by, yes, again, selection of KPIs and documenting of KPIs, which might relate to what Ala is mentioning in the chat. In the documentation of the KPI, you have to decide many things, from target setting, from typology of KPIs, measurement, calculation formula, and other details. So far, aligning, selection, and documentation. And my last question for you, what do you think is oftentimes the reason for strategy failure? Yes, you nailed it. I think this one, all the answers were straight to the point. #1, lack of leadership support. And we're not the only ones that are doing research on the topic. So I think you can look at reports made by the big 4 consultancy companies, and they have reached for years in a row to the same idea. The importance of leadership in executing strategy is critical. Then the second aspect was ineffective cross-functional collaboration. I would say that's an interesting aspect to look at. And then thirdly, it's what you've also mentioned. Some of you mentioned the aspects related to resources. Lack of internal capabilities to finalize the project. There are many good ideas there in the chat. So this is basically what I want to talk with you about. These are the facts. To some extent, I think you all are familiar with scenarios on organizational scenarios on how these type of challenges actually feel like and look like in practice. I will go on a sprint with some guidance on each aspect that I've seen in practice to be the root cause of the problem and how we can adjust it. But what I've also noticed when I've put these three columns together is that some aspects are recurrent. So if I'm thinking about managing strategy, you talk about strategic choices, right? For the formulation of strategy that you have to do at the beginning, then the planning, strategic planning. Then you talk about performance management, which acts as a means, as a tool, as a system for monitoring strategy, providing feedback. And then strategy execution, which again could not take place or it wouldn't properly take place without the usage of the KPIs. So when I lay all these three, it's very easy to notice that choosing the right KPIs shows up as a challenge in both the planning and then in working with KPIs, probably because it's somewhere between in the process. It has implications both in the planning and then further in reporting performance and working with them. And there's also another aspect that I've seen to be similar. Aligning the KPIs across the organization and ineffective cross-functional collaboration. I mark them together because they are different things, but what I've seen to work is that the usage of KPIs can nurture, done properly, can nurture the alignment of priorities and the collaboration between different functionaries in the department. It can have both a positive impact and facilitate this collaboration, or done when it's not done properly, it can hinder collaboration and create conflicting objective, cost tensions between departments. So you get actually the opposite result. Okay, so let's move into the practitioner insights. For any questions that you have along the way, please write them in the chat. And at the end, I'm going to try to cover some of them, otherwise in writing. Practitioner insights, some key takeaways for each. So let's start with strategic planning. Now, what we've seen is that most organizations that we've questioned and outside the research companies we work with, they already have a regular and usually an annual strategy planning cycle. And not just that is regular, I'm referring to the process as being formalized. There is a procedure, there are some activities that take place there. So I wouldn't say that this is the challenge. We also, if we look at how they rated the quality, if you want, of the strategic planning process, you have the bar chart here. Our research shows that even though there is a formal and the regular process for most organizations, approximately half, this is 29 plus 17 is 46. So 46% of professionals perceive this process as being highly effective in meeting the business needs, which means half of them see it as an effective process. The other half probably still questioning the extent to which the way the strategy planning takes place actually gets to a result, to a strategy that is meaningful for the organization. In terms of enablers, what enables a successful strategy planning process, a strategy that you develop, strategy plan that you develop, it seems to be coming down to data. But what kind of data? Apparently ranked first as importance are the insights from the external stakeholders. Maybe it depends here a lot on the industry in which you operate, but it can be related to the community, the regulators, shareholders. Secondly, feedback from clients, insights from clients. And the third position is business intelligence or market intelligence from the external environment in which the company operates. So these three aspects seem to have been outlined as important enablers for a good strategy. And it shouldn't come as a surprise since we are already living in a data-driven world, in a data-driven socioeconomic environment. So having access to this information is vital, and knowing how to use it, because in many cases you can have access to it, but knowing how to use it for the process, it's actually what can make the difference and turn it into an competitive advantage. So taking on the first challenge, creating a methodical process. There are many things that we can say here in regards to how the perfect strategy planning process looks like. But I want to emphasize on a few aspects. One of the things that we see to be very important for this process to be successfully and effectively serve the needs of the business is to engage the right stakeholders in the right way at the right moment. On one hand, it means to involve properly the executives from the different business units, so internally. It also means to know how to expand the involvement beyond this layer. At this point, I think most of us is clear that strategy planning has to be done with the executives. They have to participate in workshops and so on. But what not many organizations maybe manage to successfully achieve is how do you move a layer lower from this level? How can we involve more employees, frontline employees, those who are directly into the processes, into the planning? And this doesn't mean that we have to make a town hall meeting to define the objectives of the company. It means that we have to develop mechanism, feedback mechanism, communication mechanism through which issues, operational issues, ideas can float from the bottom of the organization to the top. It also means that, and we've seen these practices in innovative companies in which problem solving from complex issues that the company is struggling with in order to tackle strategic issues to be tackled could be democratized. They don't have to be fixed. Not everything has to be fixed in the ivory tower at the top of the executives. We can find ways to engage people from operations to come up with ideas, to propose solutions to some of these aspects. So from an internal point of view, I think the sweet spot here is how do we manage to involve below the executive level people inside the company in strategic planning? How do we use their knowledge of the business into that? And I think it doesn't require an annual meeting with them, but it rather requires an ongoing process of communication throughout the year so that you're constantly in touch with them. From the other perspective of involving external feedback, external stakeholders, if you're in the private sector, the key stakeholder there, maybe you have two. It might be the potential investor, if that's the case, but definitely the client, the end client, the consumer, and how do you involve them into planning? And then beyond that, we must say now also that if you're looking at how the pressure on sustainability issues has evolved, it's an increasing pressure on organizations to prove their sustainability practices, then strategy planning has to consider the stakeholders in the entire supply chain. How do you operate with them, and how does that reflect on your strategy and the choices that you make on your operating business model? Because at this moment, we can even talk about how we can, not just the government, it's an open discussion, not just for the government, but also for private entities. How are we participating and how are we changing the way we operate our businesses to become more sustainable? From a technical point of view, you have to focus both on the process steps and the structure of the outputs. And I'm saying that's a technical point of view because I've seen many strategic planning processes, procedures, and they are detailed in terms of what has to be done, but not all of them are very precise in terms of what's the output. So we know that we have to do this research to prepare for the planning session, but how does the research report has to look like? How does the output of that look like so that we can work with it easily? That's not always standardized. We know that we have to select our objectives, but not always there is a very clear template on how the strategy map, for example, of the company has to look like. How does the corporate scorecard has to look like? And while with the reporting tool is much easier, in terms of the strategy map, I'm emphasizing this because the elements that you put there are driving the way you structure your plan. You can have 5 objectives and 50 KPIs. Each objective, 10 KPIs. Now imagine that's a bit, it's a bit loose. Maybe you feel like you're losing the focus of what you're trying to do. Or you can identify that you have 5 long-term goals, and within each long-term goal, you define some objectives, specific objectives for the next 3 years, and maybe yearly based. And then for those, you come and you set up the KPIs. The structure of the strategy map, or how you summarize the essence of what your strategy plan, it's important because it helps you. On one hand, if you have to fit everything in a one page, it forces you to summarize. It enables you to think things through and to select what's actually important. And on the other hand, it helps you to communicate much clearer what needs to be achieved. And facilitation of effective workshops. Someone mentioned in the chat time when we talked about this. Yes, sometimes we spend so much time planning, not taking decisions to seal, to close certain stage so that we can move further. So if you want an effective strategy cycle, then you have to operate on a clear schedule with clear outputs, and you have to do it in, I don't know, in 6 weeks, in 2 months, but it has to be bounded by time and by effective decision making, because otherwise you're losing momentum, and it shows usually a problem of the organization in acting and deciding to the point what needs to, assuming somehow it's an ownership, owning some decisions, whether they're good or bad, you need to take one. Sometimes no decision is worse than any decision. And the last point actually builds on what I said earlier. On the second matter, conducting the external environment analysis. Well, we're all familiar with pest analysis, SWOT analysis. I would say these are traditional tools that are being used in business. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about something that maybe it's not so common. It has become more and more important to develop an internal research capability in the company that collects data on the external environment continuously. So it's not just about preparing a week before the strategy planning workshops with some research that we need, or for the strategy formulation stage. It's about building this capability, and I see in the case of large organizations that they have dedicated a team of analysts, a team of I think there are two things. On one hand, a team of analysts who handles mostly the corporate performance data, but there's also a team of researchers, if you want, those who are constantly scanning the environment and are able to provide to collect information. And whenever there's a red flag, whenever there's an opportunity, whenever there's a threat, they are brought into the attention, because this doesn't help just the planning, but also the execution. You will see that in certain industries where uncertainty is high, when the business rhythm is fast, we are moving from the traditional year planning to more shorter cycles, to quarterly strategy reviews maybe. So in that case, this is a context in which having a team that constantly collects data on it's providing information to act proactively and change, while your objectives, where you want to get, might not change every quarter or every year. Your means to get there will change. The product with which you're trying to gain the market, the product, the portfolio, the consistency of the portfolio might change. The mix of products and services that you're offering can change. And these things are more dynamic. Constant collection of data can help you steer the boat into the direction in which is needed, change the means to reach the same goal. And this is something that has to be developed as an internal research capability, or maybe, I don't know, it also can be externalized to companies who are specialized in this, but it might work, for the case of large organizations, I think it works better as an inside team. And another point that I want to bring into your attention is the strategic foresight. Strategic foresight in business. The key of the strategic foresight is not necessarily a new term, but it has becoming of increased importance for businesses, and especially in a business landscape with high levels of uncertainty. Strategic foresight is the systematic and structured approach to anticipating and trying to shape the future by using a range of tools and techniques to analyze trends and explore future scenarios for which the company can prepare accordingly. So you might ask yourselves, what's the difference between forecasting and strategic foresight? Is just a new trendy term for the same practice? It's not actually. It is slightly different in the sense that forecasting tends to focus, forecasting is using quantitative data, and it's using it to identify patterns and then be able to extrapolate. And it seeks to predict the most probable outcome based on past patterns. Strategic foresight is a much comprehensive way to approach this matter because it considers a wide range of factors. Yes, it includes quantitative data, but also qualitative factors, experts' insights, and it envisions various scenarios. So rather than focusing on a single future outcome, strategic foresight aims to develop a deeper understanding of all the drivers that are shaping the future, the potential variables that can change, and how these can emerge. It allows organizations to be more agile and adapt to uncertainty by developing different strategies, plan A, B, C, and D, and be able to adjust as new information emerges, because strategic foresight is, again, it leads us to the same idea of continuously collecting data. New information emerges, the model, the pattern changes, and you can still you can see what is the influence on the plan that you had. Okay, on selecting the right KPIs. I've seen with the corner of my eyes, there was a question. You had a question in the chart about how can we create, was it effective KPIs? Let me check, was that the question? Effective. What makes a KPI effective or not effective? I will answer your question in the sense that whether it's effective or not, it's subjective, and it's subjective to the context in which you're using it. But I think what drives the effectiveness is its ability to give you the information that you need for decision making. 45% of professionals consider that their KPIs are currently relevant for strategy monitoring. So I guess overall, we can say it's okay. But still, there is a significant part, the other 60, the other 55, the other 55% that disagrees with this or questions the relevancy of the KPIs that they have. So what do you have to consider in terms of the right KPIs? I think there is a long list of criteria. I actually put it down, and myself, I ended up with a list of 16 criteria that you can use as a checklist to see whether your KPIs are good. But I would point out, if I have to choose 3 aspects, I'll choose these. Relevancy. But what do I mean by relevancy? The KPI must properly inform decision making. When you are looking at the report and the performance report, and you're trying to understand what happened, or you're trying to decide what to do next to address the underperformance that you have, do you have the full picture? Do you have the information that you need? Is there a different side of the story? Is there a different angle of the measurement that is missing? And if it's missing, why? You don't have it on the scorecard, maybe you have it on the dashboard. So I believe that the relevancy of the KPI is directly connected to the context. What are you trying to measure? This objective, that process, and you know whether it's relevant if when you have to take a decision, you can rely on that data. That information is helpful in the process of decision making. And it doesn't have to be just helpful or nice to have. It has to be critical, because we're talking about key performance indicators. So there's information that it's good to have, it's nice to have, it builds around the critical aspect, but the KPI has to focus on the critical aspect. Selecting the right KPIs, you have to, in this process, you have to make sure that they're balanced. There is no success in using KPIs isolated or saying, well, this KPI is just for this objective, it's not connected to the other KPIs. Actually, a good corporate performance scorecard, the quality, if you want, of the performance scorecard is given by how well the KPIs connect with each other, and they tell a story, because the objectives that you have are connected. They are the step-by-step approach that you take to reach your vision eventually. So this is why the KPIs have to be connected with each other as well. So what do I mean by balance? Well, for the same objective that you want to measure, include more than one angle, put more than one KPI. Don't measure, maybe quality is the critical aspect in that measurement. But there is another angle of the story. You might want to be informed on the quantitative aspect, or maybe you are constantly looking at, in terms of safety in the factory, you are looking at lost time injury frequency rate, which is great. It's a critical KPI. But if you were to look also at number of safety non-compliances, it will help you, because there is a pattern between them. Research tells that you require 3,000 risky behaviors, for example, or non-compliances, or a number of non-compliances, so that you get one work accident. So measuring both of them in parallel, it means that you have information to proactively act before the critical aspect is reaching a level that is unacceptable. So balance, connect the KPIs and select more than one for the same objective. And then connect scorecard and dashboard KPIs. As I mentioned, there has to be a story that they tell. You will want to have the big picture, right? On the scorecard, the strategic scorecard, you just want the the big picture. But when we come to decision making, you need to know also a bit more. So use both the scorecard and a dashboard to complement the picture and to support decision making. What also got my attention in the data collection that we did was the most commonly used frameworks. I think, and also the frameworks and the reason for choice. It still, the balanced scorecard still stands as the most popular used framework, along with the objectives and key results. I think this comes strongly from behind to overtake balanced scorecard, but most likely the objectives and key results methodology, I think it suits very well to certain industries that are dynamic and innovation driven, but in other cases and for other organizations, the transition from, let's say, a more conservative system to the OKRs will probably take longer. So I rather see a common hybrid systems with the two of them combined, or a situation in which both of these frames are highly used. And then obviously on the third position, we have customized frameworks not pertaining to a particular approach. And apparently, the number one reason that guides the choice of a framework is the resources required for the implementation, the fit with the organizational culture, and the adaptability of the framework to the culture or the context or the industry. So I think the third aspect touches very well what I mentioned earlier. The objectives and key results, the goal management framework can work very good in businesses that are driven by innovation, in organizations that are rather flat. But for those who are more organized around the processes than projects, for those who have a pyramidal organizational chart, the transition there will be slower, and I think it requires some adaptations of the standard methodology. My key takeaway for the top reasons of choosing the framework, I think the most important aspect should be the fit with the organizational culture, because as I said, the idea can be great. It can work splendid in some organizations, but it can be an epic fail if it's implemented, I don't know, just taken as it is and forced into an organization or a culture that is still not ready for those new practices. And you might also be familiar with the saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So yes, the cultural aspect for any change and any system that we want to set up is important to be considered until you decide what type of framework has to be adopted. And I'm also a big supporter and promoter of customization of the frameworks to the current needs of the organization. Okay. Our next section was about working with KPIs, performance measurement. Challenge number one, aligning KPIs and targets across the organization. Alignment is like the holy grail. We keep chasing it, and probably because it's also a dynamic concept. You have to ensure that there is continuous communication and adapting. We oftentimes see performance measurement frameworks like KPIs that are reported in the company, but have not been thoroughly reviewed and aligned to the new objectives. The objectives change, and because they are quite in the same area, we keep the same KPIs, we still think it fits, and actually doesn't. And that's what probably triggers that feeling that not all the KPIs we're reporting are relevant. Many times we inherit KPIs, many KPIs. And I'm talking now at operational level. Usually we end up with 300, 400, 500 KPIs, metrics, actually better said metrics that are being reported in the company. And there is never a general cleanup in that database. So therefore, what I can tell you on alignment, the most common approach that we see is the cascading top-down. And it works great to a certain extent, in the sense that if you promote a very strong culture on top-down, it might also come with a package, with a side effect of developing some silos across the departments. Top-down is good when you also have bottom-up and you also have the horizontal alignment. And what do I mean by this? Is that if at corporate level I have 10 KPIs and the objectives associated to them, it's clear that the ones that relate to growing of the revenues and sales are going to go to the sales team. So there will be objectives and KPIs that business units take as they are from the corporate scorecard because it is their role and responsibility. But in addition to those, there has to be a bottom-up contribution in the sense of specific objectives, specific KPIs that they are working on, they are supposed to reach because they are contributing to the entire strategy. Also, what do I mean by the approach? It's not just technical, what KPIs you put where, but also how people are involved. It's one way to have the strategy team that does the cascading and goes to the executive from the marketing division and says, okay, these are your objectives and KPIs, deal with it. And it's a completely different approach when you go and you say, these are the company's priorities. Some of these have to be cascaded. This is your direct contribution. Please make a proposition and they're working to make a proposition for the functional plan of their division. So that's the involvement bottom up. And horizontal, I'm referring to, I'm going to show you the next bullet point as well. I am referring to an exercise that sometimes happens naturally in the organization, but not very time I see it as part of the procedure. And because of that, it can also naturally slip it can also be done maybe less rigorously. When each division head has to come up with their plan, it is important that there is an alignment session in which we discuss the interdependencies between the different units, because you might come up with conflicting objectives. Conflicting objectives, to give you an example, if we're thinking about an investment company, you would have the team that is responsible with investing the money, and their KPI is to reach a high level of investment transactions to the year. But their investment transactions are always vetted by the risk department, because you don't want to, you need to maintain certain risk levels. The risk department has their own KPIs related to risk levels. But if the investment transactions that you want to achieve are not aligned with the risk levels, then they have conflicting targets, because the purpose of the Department of Risk Management is to ensure a low risk, However, the other ones need to spend the money. So sometimes this means that they need to take more risky investments. This horizontal alignment of KPIs and targets can be done if you use a KPI alignment map. This means to draw correlations between the different KPIs that exist across the departments. Mapping end-to-end processes is important because then you know that my target from on-time delivery of the merchandise is dependent on process targets for order processing times. We are all part of the same machine that delivers products or services to the client. So these have to be acknowledged. And I'm saying that it happens naturally because people know, the heads, the managers, they pretty much know to which departments they're bounded with. They know what the dynamic is. So when they set the target, obviously they consider the context in which they operate. But the suggestion is to have this alignment session formally organized with the methodology, with the clear outputs of what has to happen, and to have the strategy office that checks thoroughly these to make sure that the case of conflicting target doesn't show up, because otherwise we are getting into that, we are creating problems in terms of cross-functional collaboration, which turned out to be an issue in terms of strategy execution. KPI documentation was our was another challenge in the top 3 in working with KPIs. Here, target setting is the most pressuring issue most of the times. What I seem to work best is usually to give more responsibility to the heads, to the KPI owners to set the targets and to have a clear methodology on how they have to justify for the targets that they are proposing, to back them up with data and research. In more advanced organizations, there are teams that do that in the sense that there is a data capability in the company, a team that can actually provide you all the insights that you need based on the historical data of that KPI, can give you the correlations. So can offer this support to the KPI owners so that they their choices are evidenced by data, and the negotiation between what the KPI owner thinks is suitable versus what the strategy teams find to be needed in some cases or ambitious can be reduced through additional research and backing up with data. What can also help in terms of documentation, not on target setting because we're not offering benchmarking data, but smartkpis.com provides documentation for definition, calculation formulas, data sources, data limitations, and other information important for the measurement process. And I think this can give you a shortcut to filling up the KPI documentation form, leaving you more time to focus on the critical aspects, such as the calculation methodology, because there you might have more than one option to choose from, and the targets and thresholds desired. And on the last section of strategy execution, most commonly mentioned, lack of leadership support. What can we do in terms of lack of leadership support? I thought how I can summarize, because it's a very long story here. So I picked up 5 things to give you as a hint, and then you can further research and investigate the subject. But they need to act like coaches. So we have to move from that command and control mindset towards being a coach. And I'm happy that I have seen this because we work a lot with the companies in the Middle East. I think that what has happened in the last 5-7 years, it's a huge change in mentality and in how the quality of the leadership in organizations. So I believe that more companies are investing into teaching these skills, and I think that the results will be seen. I'm not going to dive on this because I'm sure you know what it refers to. I want to tell you more about building bridges. Building bridges, I think it's one of the most important skills in strategy execution for a leader, is the ability to align different stakeholders around the same vision, the purpose, and to build bridges where there are differences of opinions, maybe even some company politics, different types of operations being managed, different levels of awareness and understanding of why are we doing this and how do we need to do it. And I think this is the key element of the leadership in terms of strategy execution, because on one hand, it needs to clarify the vision and make it relevant and understandable for that person who works in marketing, for that one who works in production, for that one who works in sales, for the different backgrounds of the different heads in the company. And then he needs to make them work together. Because as I said, delivering a service or a product relies on collaboration on the departments. And you can do it nice and quick and effective, or it can be a lot of tension, rework, and frustration in getting it done. So this means that he needs to communicate strategy clearly and convincing, but also listen to feedback, address concern, build trust and commitment. I think this is where mostly leadership skills refer also to empathy, emotional intelligence, on how to bring people together and make them work together. It has to manage complexity. This means that you need to be able to juggle with ambiguity, with changes, with different risk levels, adapt the plan, adjust, be able to change. A very common issue, it was rated in our survey, but not among the top 3, is about rerouting. Sometimes we have resources stuck in projects that are not going to be successful. They're not going there, but sometimes people have a hard time letting go, and admitting it was a bad choice and we should stop and just relocate the resources. So relocation of the resources and being able to manage complexity, but also to zoom out to see the big picture and zoom in and also see the small connecting points. Discipline and patience. Leadership is involved in taking decisions and supporting the strategy execution. So you have to be consistent. Companies that have passed the test of time are those not who have impressed necessarily through their innovation or I don't know, something very flashy to the eye, but those who have stood the test of time were those who were disciplined and had patience. They've chosen a path, and they have taken all decisions as aligned to those objectives and have been consistent. So it's not just in business, I think in other areas, in personal development areas, it works as well. Discipline, small steps every day in the same direction, and eventually it's going to get you there. But if you keep letting yourself distracted by, oh, that new opportunity, oh, maybe if we do this, let's change that, at a certain point that you might be losing your focus and your path. And nevertheless, they have to drive results. So they need to use KPIs as feedback tools to set targets, to set standards of work, to monitor and promote the usage of KPIs and performance standards in the company. Ineffective cross-functional collaboration. I've mentioned earlier when we talked about alignment, we need to have an end-to-end process mapping in case it does not happen. We need to have good governance and communication practices among the functional areas, and use the KPIs as a tool to align people, to nurture collaboration across department and alignment of priorities. Lack of internal capabilities. Internal capabilities here can mean many things. It can be lack of maybe resources, not having the staff, not having the skill, the competency. But what I want to bring to your attention about this is relates to we review strategy, we create a strategy plan for the year, but not all the time. Not all the time we manage to acknowledge the fact that even smaller changes might need a change in the system of the company. Your strategy has to be aligned with the organizational structure. It has to be aligned with how decisions are taken in the company. It has to be aligned with the culture. And if it isn't, then you have to build the infrastructure for strategy execution. And what does it mean? You have to have the right people in the right places. You have to have the skills, the competencies that you need in order to deliver on those objectives. You have to have the systems. Sometimes it's the technology that needs to be implemented. Sometimes it's the simple systems for how people communicate in the company. Systems can also mean processes, procedures. The entire architecture of the company has to support strategy execution. And it doesn't only happen. I think that most of these things are considered when you set up the company. And then if you introduce some huge transformational change, and even in those cases, maybe they're not thoroughly thought, but to some extent, they have to be considered or at least revised more often to make sure that that the means for achieving the strategic objectives, for implementing the plans, the projects are there and are not somehow hindering or very different from what needs to happen. And then the culture. You need the right culture for what you want to implement in the way that you want to implement. So this is why, because this is why building a culture that is open to change and that is oriented towards continuous learning is usually the best choice to facilitate or to build, to prepare for effective strategy execution, regardless of what's going to be the strategy, because you have the mindset that is enabling people to absorb and adapt with the ease to changes or to new ways of working. And we touched the subject of agility, so I wanted to drop also this statistic. Apparently 26% of respondents perceive the organization as having a low or very low agility level, while 36 are somewhere in the moderate level, rated it as moderate. So what do I want to say about agility, because it relates with strategy execution, is you have to have all three of them: strategic agility, operational agility, and leadership agility. Leadership agility is about the mindset, being open to change, being interested into getting the pulse of the market, feeling the pulse of the external environment, and being able to lead these changes and internalize uncertainty and let's say transformational initiatives. Operational agility refers to the operations. Are they flexible? How flexible are our processes? And strategic agility refers to the ability to spot opportunities, trends, and adapt accordingly to it. Obviously, for strategy execution, the core here, the direct focus is on operational agility, because we're talking about changing the flexibility of the processes. But this comes hand in hand with the right culture, because if you want flexible processes, you have to have people who are able to work maybe with less guidance, with that can be easily moved across different roles within the company. So, as I said, depending on what's your strategy and what are the projects, how you want to get there, you need to also start building the right culture so that the people can operate effectively in those conditions and to the implementation of the strategy. So I'm looking at the clock because I'm a bit over the time that I have planned. If I am to summarize everything that I have mentioned, I think it has been a bit of a sprint with the information flow. I would say the following. You have to see strategic planning as a methodical step-by-step process with a clear time frame and structure for the outputs. Summarize the plan into a one-page tool. This summarization is great for forcing people to prioritize and decide what's critical and what is just important. And this one-page tool, the strategy map, the strategy house, how you want to call it, brings together the objectives, the KPIs, and the initiatives, and it provides clarity on what needs to be done and what is the measure of success. And it has a significant impact on the ability to implement strategy or to execute it, because people know what we are doing and how we have to do it. And on the matter of strategy execution, I think it requires the right people, but also the proper organizational system and culture that can support the projects that need to be implemented and the overall strategy and vision of the organization. So I'm going to wrap it up here. The next slides of the presentation will reach you if you're ever interested to become a member of our organization or on any of our training courses on strategy planning or strategy execution. But for the time being, I think we'll take, I'll take 3 brief questions from the audience. And for the rest of them, if you register, and I think you did register with the emails accounts, I'll be able to share the answers in writing. Okay, so I'm gonna go backwards to see what we have. Okay, we have a question from Nada. How can we identify KPIs and who is responsible to measure it? How can you identify KPIs? Well, first of all, you have to identify what you want to measure. Depending on the context, you might want to select KPIs for the monitoring strategy, strategic objectives, or you might want to monitor KPIs for maybe a project or for a process. How do we encourage you to start the conversation is to involve the people that are directly related to the strategic objective or the project process. And you can use brainstorming techniques. We do the value flow analysis. It's not necessarily a concept for KPI selection. It comes from a different management tool, but you can apply it in the following way. You can select your process or the objective that you want to measure and brainstorm ideas of metrics. At this point, they're just metrics that relate to the following stages. What are the inputs, the resources that we need related to this process or objective? What are the process measurements that we can make? What are the output measurements? What are the impact or outcome measurements? And you brainstorm metrics for each of these 4 stages. You end up with quite a few. And then you want to identify the KPI. So you need to identify maybe 2. In order to select what is critical for the measurement of that objective, first of all, it has to be a direct measurement, not indirect, a direct measurement. And second, you choose it by identifying what information do you need in order to take decisions for that objective to become reality. So it's driven by what information is needed. It can also be driven about what type of problems you are confronted with. In some cases, you put KPIs because you want to address a problem. Once you have it as a KPI, it sends the message that it is important, and once you fix the problem, you can move on and change the measurement. The responsibility of the KPI relies usually to a managerial position, but again, it depends, because if each individual in a company is responsible for his KPIs, right? As part of the employee performance appraisal, we have our individual KPIs that we have to meet. Corporate KPIs are usually in the responsibilities of the leadership positions at the top. Operational KPIs can be for team leader, or you can even split the responsibility across the different team members depending on how the roles are divided. So these are people responsible to reaching the targets, responsible for the measurement and data collection. Again, it depends. You have companies in which there is a department that collects the data for all KPIs and makes it available to those who use it. I'm going to take also Tariq's question. How to get departments to collaborate if they have competing interests and historical issues deeply rooted? Oh, I don't know if there is a magic wand to make them disappear, but here is the thing. They all have something in which they connect to each other. You can connect them in this way. Shared objectives. You can institute the practice of a shared objective with a shared KPI, which means that the KPI cannot be met without the contribution of both sides. When they are bounded to each other in this manner, they also depend on each other. So they might have to figure it out a way to work together to get those objectives. So this can be one way. Now, this subject is very sensitive. It depends a lot on what lies behind those issues, whether it's a culture problem, whether it's a communication problem. But in general, a way to highlight to people that we need each other, that we can't succeed as an organization unless we work with each other, is to introduce the practice of shared objectives. Okay, and one last question. There was something with, okay, let's take the last one. What was it? There was something with objectives. The difference between a strategic objective and an initiative. The strategic objective has to show what you want to achieve. What is the end purpose? My end purpose can be, I want to become the leader. My objective is to become the market leader in my industry. The strategic initiative to become the market leader can be the launch of a project and the launch of a product that does not exist. So I might become the market leader if I tap into a customer need that is maybe latent or has not been observed by the others, and I launch this new project. The initiative shows me what do I need to do to achieve my objective, and the good practice to differentiate easily and not confuse them in the strategy plan or other documents where you present them is to express the objective with a verb, become the market leader, and phrase the initiative, the strategic initiative, with a project name. And it can be product X launch. That can be the strategic initiative. Thank you very much for your presence today and for an interactive session that we had. I look forward to seeing you in other of our events, and keep in touch. I wish you a lot of success in all of your endeavors, and hoping to see you soon. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or drop me a message. Have a good evening.